This is one of the most shocking cover-ups in modern British history. Thousands of Afghans have been secretly smuggled into Britain by successive governments who tried their best to stop you from ever finding out about it. A data breach meant that around 100,000 Afghans risked having their personal details handed over to the Taliban during the Afghan withdrawal. It's worth noting, by the way, that apparently the Taliban have now come out and said they actually knew about this list all along. So there we go. But the then Tory government decided to bring tens of thousands of them over to Britain. But they wanted to cover all of this up. So they took out a super injunction to stop anyone from reporting it. Although the Ministry of Defence now insists that 6,900 Afghans have come to the UK as a direct result of this breach, a further 17,000 were already in the UK under a separate relocation scheme, but were also affected by this leak. So that means, in total, about 24,000 Afghans affected by that breach have been brought to the UK already, or will be here in future. They say the cost of this is about £7 billion. So this includes Afghans from several different resettlement schemes, but not those, of course, who've entered illegally across the Channel. So we can add them to the list as well. The scale of this cover-up is mind-blowing. Now, people right across Britain have been wondering, gosh, why are there so many Afghans suddenly living in my town? Well, the answer, it appears, is because successive governments have been using your money to bring them over here. So there were plans to create housing for homeless Afghans in York. There were some plans for Afghans in Stoke-on-Trent. Then there was an entire hotel in Lancashire for the Afghans. Then there was homes for Afghans in Oxford. And then, a few Afghans in Dorset, about 300 Afghans in Bracknell, in Berkshire. I mean, I could go on here all night because they've scattered them across the UK. And you might have forgotten about this, but there was a time a couple of years ago when it actually looked like you, the British public, was going to be asked to take an Afghan in yourself. That was the scale of the problem. 1 in 10 Afghan arrivals are going to enter the homeless system. So they'll all need housing. And because they've been able to bring their kids over and their families, etc., they'll all go to the top of that housing waiting list, won't they? And around 20% of Ministry of Defence housing has been given to the Afghans, according to the Mail. So what about the risk to the public? Well, Afghan nationals have the highest rate of convictions for sex offences than any other nationality in Britain. There you go. And our governments have been secretly flying them in and scattering them around the UK. Now, this started under the Tories, but it continued under this Labour government. In October, Rachel Reeves signed off on the continuation of the secret scheme. Apparently, Angela Rayner and Defence Secretary John Healey were involved in those discussions as well. So, when Rachel Reeves was saying this,
£22 billion black hole.
The £22 billion black hole of £22 billion. Of the £22 billion black hole.
The £22 billion in-year black hole.
Right, what she wasn't telling you was the cost of this cover-up, was she? So about £7 billion they've had to find for the Afghans, which we're not allowed to know about. Interesting that she omitted that from the £22 billion black hole. You know what the icing on this particularly awful cake is? So far, around 900 of the Afghans that we smuggled into Britain ourselves are now suing us because we put their lives at risk to begin with. That could cost you another £1 billion there or thereabouts. Now, this poses several questions, doesn't it? Have all these people been properly checked? How do we know that none of them are terrorists? If one of them committed a murder or a rape here in Britain, which statistically, certainly when it comes to the rape, they're actually quite likely to do, when they went to court, would we have been told how they'd come to Britain? Well, I suspect not, because there was an injunction out against the scheme, wasn't there? So that's terrible, isn't it? The mass importation of Afghans at the taxpayers' expense and the fact they've been scattered around the UK was done secretly, without any parliamentary scrutiny or any public conversation. In fact, the Daily Mail claims that there was actually an attempt to essentially deliberately mislead Parliament about this. Apparently, they were worried about civil unrest if people found out. Oh, here we go again. So this is like the Pakistani rape gangs, isn't it? It's another case where the ruling class wanted to cover up the truth to stop you protesting about it. Now, this is the largest evacuation in modern history, and it's happened secretly. If our government is capable, or governments are capable, of hiding this from you, what else are they hiding? Well, I'm joined now by former Tory MP Bob Seely. Bob, thank you very much. This is all the Tories' fault, isn't it?
This certainly happened under us. It was actually a serving soldier who sent the email, but it was in the MOD, and it happened under the last government for sure.
So what has to happen now, Bob? Because, you know, looking at it from a lot of people's positions, the Tories were responsible for the highest ever year of net migration into Britain, and they're also responsible for secretly importing a load of Afghans.
OK, I agree with some of what you say. I don't agree with other bits, Patrick. Ben Wallace wrote a very good piece in the Telegraph this evening. It's out there if people have, can read it. And he outlined the reasons for doing what he did. And there is an argument to say that we had an obligation for these people. Where I agree with you, and I suspect a lot of your viewers and listeners, is that the timing of this isn't great. It comes at a time when people are fed up with illegal and legal migration, and there is a sense that the British state is becoming increasingly dysfunctional and effectively looks after everyone but the British people. I don't doubt that there will be some Afghans that we owe this to. The problem is, for every one that comes here, they might bring between 5, 10 and even 14, I heard today, family members with them. We also know that Afghans, sadly, have a rate of sexual assault higher than anybody else in this country. An Afghan, sadly, is 23 times, you probably know these figures better than I do, 23.7 times likely to sexually assault somebody. So will I want a child being brought up in a town with that community? I'm not so sure.
But that's why they tried. So if there is a case for bringing people over who, allegedly helped us during the Afghan war, that's one thing. But then why hide it from us?
I tell you why. There was a decent reason to hide it. I'm not sure there was a decent reason, Patrick, to hide it for so long. The reason for hiding it, or for getting the injunction, was because if the Taliban knew, they would simply race and run to kill these people before they could be saved. So there is a good argument to say that we needed a period of time to come and round these people up and do something to either protect them or to warn them. Why that injunction went on for 2 years, I'm not defending that for one second. I do not know. But perhaps there's an argument. It may be just the British state covering up for itself.
Yeah, I mean, you said there, fair enough, that they can also bring up to, in one case you seem to know about, there are about 14, family members with them as well, which I don't think this scheme was designed for. And it's led to people in certain towns in Britain now clocking why their local council was so keen to develop housing for Afghans. But this is a betrayal, isn't it? This is a lie. And this is why people kick off, Bob, isn't it?
It is why people kick off. And as I say, Patrick, look, Afghan war is now receding into history. I think Trump's behaviour was not great over the Afghan war because he pulled out at very short notice, blaming Biden. So we had a moral duty to some of the people who serve with us. But we also, increasingly, government and the system has a responsibility above all to the British people. And there is a very clear sense, and I see it all the time, and so do you, that the British people are fed up with a system that seems to prioritise others. So if you're an Afghan, the system will work for you. If you're an illegal immigrant, the system will work for you. If you're the Mauritian government, the system will give you £35 billion. If you're a developing world country who spouts out some nonsense on climate change, the system will hand over 10 billion. But, if you're a law-abiding citizen and you live in a number of towns in this country where you've got very poor community relations or you've had grooming gangs, the system hasn't wanted to listen for 10, 20 years. I understand that. And actually, I feel people's anger. Just say sorry. I think it was Biden that pulled out of Afghanistan, though, wasn't it? It wasn't Trump. But it was the Trump deal.
Okay, I see what you mean. Just sorry, very quickly, Bob, on this now. It's all very well and good saying, okay, all right, people feel betrayed and all of that. But I mean, the idea that the government might have secretly flown in like a sex offender and plonked them in someone's area. I mean, were these people even vetted properly?
Some were, some weren't, is my gut feeling. And it's quite clear also that, like you, I've been reading the fact there are some people who we gave a very firm no to because of those sorts of reasons and are now in anyway. And you can pretty much guarantee, look, I wish all these people who serve with us are deeply honourable and actually become good British citizens. Like you, I worry that quite a few won't, and quite a few have, either an Afghan or, a Pashtun culture, which has a very different set of sexual and moral and ethical mores than what is acceptable in this country. And that's why people are angry, and I feel that anger.
All right, Bob, look, I do appreciate you coming on, mate. Thank you very much. I know it's obviously, quite a tricky thing for a former Tory MP to be talking about something that happened here, but Bob Seeley left for former Tory MP, like I said. We've got a bit more detail on this that I'm going to be bringing to you in about 10 minutes' time, all right? It is a cover-up of epic proportions, and it makes my blood boil. But coming up, here you go, have a bit of this.